From struggling to successful, my in-laws forced me to sign a prenup, but now I'm worth 5x more, and they want to cancel it. 8 years ago, when Cleo and I got married, things didn't exactly start off on the right foot with her family. I still remember how her parents looked at me, like I was an outsider, someone who didn't belong. I had been working in retail when we met, and I had big dreams of opening my own business, but her parents didn't see it that way. They didn't trust me, especially not financially, and made it clear from the start that they didn't think I was good enough for their daughter. My family and theirs were worlds apart. My parents both worked modest jobs. My dad was a history teacher, and my mom ran a small bookstore. We weren't poor by any means, but we didn't have the luxury they did. They came from old money, had connections everywhere, and expected their daughter to marry someone who could keep up with that. I'd never been someone who cared about wealth, but I could see how it mattered to them. And to be honest, it felt like a weight I couldn't escape. So when they insisted I sign a prenup just a few months before our wedding, it felt like a punch in the gut. They told me it was the only way they'd feel secure about me marrying their daughter. It wasn't just about keeping our assets separate if things fell apart. It went even further. If we ever divorced, I would have to reimburse Cleo and her parents for helping me out while I was building my business. It wasn't just a legal contract. It felt like a declaration that they didn't think I could make it on my own, that I wasn't good enough for Cleo, that my dreams were too small, too far out of reach. It hurt, and it stung more than I wanted to admit. But despite the deep ache, I signed a prenup. Cleo did, too, though it wasn't without a lot of tension. We both knew exactly what was going on. Her parents were trying to control the situation, trying to make sure I never got too comfortable. But we loved each other, and despite everything, we made a promise to each other. No matter what, we'd prove them wrong. The next few years were a blur of hard work. My business took off slowly at first, a few clients here and there, long hours trying to make ends meet. The grind was relentless, but I had a vision, and I was willing to sacrifice everything for it. There were moments when I thought about giving up, especially when things seemed too difficult, but Cleo was always there, encouraging me, reminding me of why I was doing it all. We had each other, and that was enough. Then, a couple of years ago, things finally began to click. My business started growing at a pace I hadn't anticipated. The digital marketing I'd invested in paid off in a big way. I'd made connections, expanded, and finally gained some financial stability. I could see the dream I'd been chasing for years becoming a reality. And with that success came a new problem, one I never expected. A few days ago, Cleo's parents came over for dinner. It had been a while since they'd visited. The evening started off fine. Small talk, the usual niceties. Our daughter, Lola, had just gone to bed, and we were winding down when they asked to have a serious conversation. It wasn't until then that I could feel the tension building. It was a conversation I'd been dreading for years. They told me they had been thinking a lot about the past, and now that I had achieved financial success, they felt it was time to dissolve the prenup. At first, I thought I hadn't heard them correctly. They assured me that they no longer had any doubts about me, that I had proven myself. They said they didn't see any reason for the prenup to stay in place. I was stunned. I'd worked my whole life to get to this point, fighting through the doubts and the criticisms, and now they were acting like none of that mattered. They were rewriting history, erasing the years of resentment, the insults, the way they'd treated me like a failure. Now that I had succeeded, they wanted to pretend they'd always had faith in me. It was too much. I couldn't just let it go. I told them that the prenup had been their idea in the first place. It was the only way they'd accept me into their family. Now, they wanted to act like it was no longer relevant. It felt like a slap in the face. I sarcastically told them I didn't want them to lose their safety net, but they didn't seem to understand the implication. The conversation spiraled quickly. They tried to explain that it had all been for Cleo's protection, that they didn't want me to take advantage of her. But that wasn't the point. The point was that they never believed in me. They always thought I was going to fail. Now that I'd succeeded, they wanted to pretend they'd always believed in me. I couldn't accept that. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the years of mistreatment, the way they tried to control me, the way they couldn't see me as an equal. To them, I was always just someone who had married their daughter for what she could give me. To them, I was always the outsider. And now that I'd made something of myself, they were trying to rewrite our history. They didn't get to erase all of that, to just wipe away the years of hardship and doubt. At that moment, I'd had enough. I told them to leave. It was late, Lola was asleep, and I wasn't about to keep arguing with them. They didn't take it well. They yelled, accusing me of being ungrateful, of not respecting them, of not recognizing the role they had played in my life. But the truth was, they hadn't given anything meaningful to my success. Any money they gave had been for their daughter, not me. They hadn't sacrificed anything. They tried to manipulate Cleo by telling her she needed to choose between them and me. They told her I didn't respect her family, that I wasn't willing to make things right. But Cleo wasn't falling for it. She saw through their tactics. She knew what they were doing. It wasn't about family anymore. It was about control. And Cleo wasn't going to let them destroy what we had built together. Since then, things have been tense. Cleo has kept in contact with her parents, but the pressure hasn't let up. They want her to leave me. They want her to walk away from everything we've worked for, everything we've built together. But I'm not going to let them tear us apart. As for the prenup, I'm willing to discuss dissolving it, but not on their terms. Not after everything they've put me through. If Cleo feels like they have a point, I'll listen. But I'm standing firm on this one. They don't get to control me, and they don't get to control our family. We're a team, and no one, not even her parents, will change that. This is our life, our future, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take that away from us.
2 weeks ago, I turned 19. The day was supposed to be special, a turning point in my life, but instead, it became a reminder of everything that had always been wrong in my family. My grandparents, bless their hearts, gifted me a trip to Rome, complete with plane tickets and a substantial check to cover my expenses. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. I opened the beautiful envelope they gave me, and my eyes welled up with tears. Rome, the city I had wanted to visit since I was a child, was finally within my grasp. But then, as usual, my parents stepped in. My older sister, Amelia, who's 23 and, to put it bluntly, the family's golden child, suddenly became the priority. My parents argued that the trip would be more beneficial for her resume as she was studying architecture. According to them, it was the perfect opportunity for her to visit Rome's famous buildings. But here's the thing, I had been planning on majoring in history, and I knew that Rome was crucial to understanding that history. Furthermore, Amelia had already gotten the same opportunity when she turned 18, and she chose to take the money instead. But that didn't matter to them, it was all about what Amelia needed. I tried reasoning with them, pointing out how unfair this was, but they dismissed my feelings, insisting that Amelia's needs were greater. Amelia needs this for her future, they said. You'll have other chances to travel later. The worst part came when they casually remarked, we don't want this opportunity to go to waste. That one stung, like they were implying that I wouldn't appreciate it as much as Amelia would. Finally, worn down by the endless arguments, I gave in. I told them they could do whatever they wanted with the tickets, as long as I still had the check. At least that would be some small consolation. But here's where it gets unbelievable, they managed to get the tickets transferred. I didn't even know how, given that the airline's policy was clear, but they did it. Amelia grabbed the boarding pass on the day I was supposed to fly to Rome. A few hours later, the phone rang. It was the police. Amelia had been in an accident on her way to the airport. She grabbed the taxi driver's steering wheel, convinced he was driving the wrong way. The car crashed. Amelia was okay, just a few scratches, but the taxi driver wasn't so lucky. He ended up with a fractured arm and a nasty gash on his forehead. My parents were panicking, scrambling to settle the matter with the driver and keep Amelia out of court. When I heard the news, something inside me snapped. I blurted, "This is karma. This is what you get for stealing my trip." I know it wasn't the most sensitive thing to say, but I couldn't help myself. My parents were horrified. "Anna, how could you say that? Your sister could have been killed," they yelled. They accused me of being selfish and inconsiderate, hurling the usual accusations at me. But I was beyond furious. They were the selfish ones. They had stolen my dream trip, something that meant so much to me, just to cater to Amelia. That's when I realized I didn't need to put up with this anymore. I didn't need to sacrifice my happiness for a family that didn't appreciate me. I walked out the door, caught a taxi, and went straight to the hospital where Amelia was being treated. I had made up my mind, I wasn't going to let them win. I wanted to take control of my life. At the hospital, I found my parents and Amelia on the same floor as the taxi driver, still dealing with the aftermath of the accident. Amelia was busy trying to convince the police that it wasn't her fault. I didn't care. I marched up to her, grabbed her boarding pass from her purse, and ran for the door. I rushed to the airport, heart pounding, and barely made it in time to board the plane. The whole flight to Rome, I didn't check my phone. When I landed, I saw the messages from my parents and Amelia. They were furious, calling me every name in the book, accusing me of being callous, selfish, and of abandoning them during a family crisis. Amelia was especially angry, claiming I had ruined her life. But I wasn't sorry. It was her fault for grabbing the steering wheel in the first place, and I was done being the second-best daughter. Rome, though, was everything I had dreamed of: the history, the art, the food. It was magical. For the first time in my life, I felt free. I wasn't the overlooked daughter anymore. I was just Anna, and that felt amazing. I spent my days exploring ancient ruins, admiring art, and eating my weight in spaghetti. I was living my life on my terms. A few days into my trip, I called my grandparents. I told them everything about the trip, about the arguments, about the accident, about everything. I poured my heart out, tears streaming down my face. They were stunned and angry at my parents, but most importantly, they understood. They saw the pain I had been carrying for years, and they were furious at how I had been treated. "Anna," my grandmother said, her voice full of emotion, "you did the right thing. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be loved." They invited me to come live with them when I returned. They assured me that they would take care of me, that I wouldn't have to worry about anything anymore. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and understood. When I got back, I went straight to my grandparents' house. They had already packed up all my things from my parents' house. The guest room was ready for me, with clean linens and a vase of my favorite flowers on the nightstand. It felt like coming home. My grandparents had already confronted my parents, expressing their disappointment in how they had treated me. They had severed all ties with them, saying they had no desire to interact with people who treated family like this. My parents tried to twist everything, claiming I was exaggerating and that I was just jealous of Amelia. They even called me selfish for abandoning them when they needed me the most. But my grandparents didn't care. They saw the truth. Since then, I've blocked my parents' and Amelia's numbers. I don't need that negativity in my life anymore. I'm living with my grandparents now, and it's peaceful. They support me in everything I do. They're covering all my college expenses, tuition, books, a new laptop. They want to give me the possibilities I've been denied for so long. I'm finally free of expectations, comparisons, and the constant sense of not being good enough. I'm free to be myself,